the Lord, the fancy ammunition. Praise the Lord, the fancy ammunition. Praise the Lord, the fancy ammunition, and we'll all stay free. Praise the Lord, let's wake into position. Man the Lord, to sit around a wishing. Praise the Lord, we're all between perdition and the deep blue sea. Yes, the sky pilot said it. You've gotta give him credit for a son of a gunner was he. Shouting, praise the Lord, we're on a mighty mission. All aboard, we're not a going fishing. Praise the Lord, and pass the ammunition, and we'll all stay free.
I spent the entire morning riding outside Washington City. This afternoon I spent some time at a shooting gallery. Nothing releases tension like practicing one's marksmanship at a shooting gallery. I just got back from my mistress's house. My mistress is named Ella Turner Starr, and she lives with her sister Nanny, who has the most wonderful house of pleasure here in Washington City for distinguished gentlemen. It's right around the corner from the White House. Ella must have been here either this morning or this afternoon. She left out my brandy and my corncob pipe. Oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling Clementine, thou art lost but gone forever, dreadful sorry Clementine. Now you know why I love that house. I can't stay long. I have an appointment tonight with an old school friend of mine, a Mr. Samuel Arnold. I haven't seen him since we were in school together. The last time I was in Baltimore, I heard he was in town, so I came back here, wrote him a letter. He answered and said he would come here to my hotel room tonight. Samuel Arnold and I have great things to discuss. Great things. Oh, Mother. My mother was a Cockney flower girl who sold flowers on the streets of London when she met my father. My father was Junius Brutus Booth, Sr., rising young tragedian of the London stage, rival to Edmund Kean himself. One evening, my mother sold my father flowers outside the Covent Garden Theatre, and they fell madly in love. But they could not marry because father was already married to a woman whose name was Adelaide Delanoy Booth. They had one son, my half-brother Richard. My mother and father fell madly in love, and soon a courtship developed. They ran away together on a holiday to the Azores Islands. Here, mother discovered that she was carrying my brother Junius, so instead of returning to England, they took the next sailing vessel and sailed across the Atlantic to the United States. They landed here in Norfolk, Virginia in 1821. My father immediately sought American engagements. He went on his American tour. But he put my mother in a cabin in the woods of Maryland to hide her from other traveling English actors. Here, all my brothers and sisters were born. My brother Junius, my sister Rosalie, 4 other babies, all of whom died in infancy before I was born. My brother Edwin, good old Ned, my sister Asia, whom I adored. I came into this world on May the 10th, 1838, to be followed by brother Joseph 2 years later. My earliest memories are those of being taken in my mother's arms and being told, "Hush, pet, the other children are wrong. You're right. You're always right. You could never be wrong. You're my favorite pet." My father was hardly ever at home because he was off on tour. But when he did come home, he would take me and put me on a pedestal and have me recite Shakespeare. My father would say, "Absalom, Absalom, my bright boy, Absalom, look at him, Marianne. He's going to be the actor in the family." And so I was. I remember starting to school. I went to the Bel Air Academy, and later I transferred to St. Timothy's Hall in Catonsville, Maryland. I remember meeting a boy whose name was John Sleeper Clark. I called him Sleepy Clark. Sleepy later grew up and married my sister Asia, so we became brothers-in-law. But I remember lying in a field, talking to Sleepy about our future. "Sleepy, when I grow up, I want to become a great actor, just like my father. I want to be very famous. But Sleepy, I want a particular kind of fame. I want immortality. I just have to have immortality." When I was about 12, my brother Ned accompanied my father on a tour of the California gold mines. One cold, blustery winter afternoon, I remember coming in from the farm, and Mother was crying. "Mother? Mother, what is it?" "You received a letter?" He was on his way back from California by himself when he stopped off in New Orleans for an engagement at the St. Charles Theater. Following his engagement, he took a riverboat up the Mississippi on his way home, where he contracted a fever. He never even got off the boat. When I was 17, Ned came home from California. Ned. Oh, Ned. Oh, Ned. Ned, you are Hamlet, melancholy and all. My brother Ned had not only returned from a tour of California, but a tour of Australia and the Sandwich Islands. He had the unique experience of playing Hamlet to the King of the Sandwich Islands, who watched from his throne chair in the wings. My brother Ned was about ready to begin his Eastern engagements, here in the States. Floggy went a courting Miss Mouse, Miss Mouse. Floggy went a courting Miss Mouse. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day. Oh, I just have to go into the theatre. I have to follow. I have to follow in Ned's footsteps, in Father's footsteps. I have this burning desire to go on the stage. I just have to go into the theatre. So, I got my first job in Baltimore at the St. Charles Theatre, playing Richmond in Shakespeare's Richard III. Our reviews were moderately successful, and the following afternoon, I galloped across the countryside to tell Mother of my success in the theatre. The following autumn, I got a job as an apprentice for $8 a week, playing small roles at the Arch Street Theatre in Philadelphia. I hated Philadelphia audiences, and Philadelphia audiences hated me. My fellow actors and stage managers urged me to study. They wanted me to study, but why should I? My success in the theatre would come not from hard work or study, but from inspiration. I was a Booth. The theatre was in my blood. Once, during a performance, I was playing a Venetian in Victor Hugo's Lucretia Borgia, when I was booed and hissed from the stage. On another occasion, I was playing Dawson in The Gamester, when I had to be dragged from the stage. But I would have my revenge on Philadelphia audiences. Matt got me an engagement in Rochester, New York, playing Shakespeare's Richard III. Then I got a job in the South, in Richmond, at the Richmond Theatre in Richmond, Virginia, for $20 a week, playing small roles with a promise of better roles. Here my talent was allowed to blossom and develop, and before I knew it, I had become the darling of Richmond audiences and the darling of Richmond society. Oh, how I loved the South! The South, the land of honeysuckle and magnolias. Part of my identity formed in the South. I became part of the South, and the South became part of me.
Look away, Dixieland, in Dixieland, where I was born in early on one frosty morning.
Then I got a job in Georgia, at Matthew Canning's Columbus Theatre in Columbus, Georgia. Here I played supporting roles. I played such roles as Don Pedro in Much Ado About Nothing, and Uncas in The Last of the Mohicans. One hot, sultry summer night, Matthew Canning, the owner of the theatre, came to my hotel room. I said, "Matt, want to sit down?" He said, "No, thank you, Johnny. I think I'll stand." So I sat down. He said, "Johnny, I just passed my bar exams, but I don't want to become a lawyer." I said, "Well, that's fine, Matt. What do you want to do?" He said, "I don't even want to manage the theatre anymore. I want to give that to my wife. I want to become your manager. I want to become your agent." I said, "Oh, Matt, do you think I'm ready?" He said, "Of course you are. With your name and your talent and the way it's developed, you should be playing starring parts. You should be touring. You should be appearing with these stock companies." So Matt got me my first starring engagement in Montgomery, Alabama. I played the evil Pescara in The Apostate. When the curtains came to, I found that I was a star. I achieved stardom in Montgomery, Alabama. A new star had been born in the American theater. Following my success in Montgomery, Matt got me an engagement in Rochester, New York. Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious by the summer sun of York. and all the clouds that glowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. Then on to the west, to Vanderbaar's McVicker's Theatre in St. Louis. Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious by the summer sun of York, and all the clouds that glowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. I was a triumph in St. Louis. On to Chicago. Chicago, that magnificent, wonderful, raw, wooden muddy city of the West. Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious by the summer sun of York, and all the clouds that glowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. Chicago was my own kind of personal triumph. Chicago was at my feet. Then back east, Cleveland, Cincinnati, New York. I played Romeo at Howard's Athenaeum in Boston to a large female audience. It was while I was in Boston that I was hailed as the handsomest man on the American stage. You see, I was becoming quite a matinee idol. I had to have women. Women were a large part of my existence. And oh, there were many. Actresses, prostitutes, admirers. I had to have women. Women were like food and drink to me. And when I was through with them, I discarded them in large refuge heaps. It was while I was in Albany that I began to have more leisure time. So I began to drink more heavily. When I would drink, I could feel my moods going through various phases. I became more melancholy, more morose. Those who knew me well said that when I drank, I even became a bit cynical. But you had to know me awfully well to know that. It was while I was in Virginia that I saw John Brown hanged. They led John Brown up some stairs onto a platform. They put a noose around his neck, pulled the lever, and he was dangling in mid-air, the life wriggling from his body. All lines were cut between the North and the South. Slowly, each southern state seceded from the Union. But then they formed their own government. They had their own president, their own Congress. And soon they would have their own army, their own navy, the Confederate States of America. Where there had been one country, there were now two. The United States of America to the north, and the Confederate States of America to the south. Oh, I wish that I were in the land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten. Look away, Dixieland. In Dixieland where I was born, early on a Sunday morn, look away, oh, Dixieland. Then Fort Sumter was fired upon, and this great Civil War began. Damned old things. That aged, senile American tragedian, Edwin Forrest, had achieved greatness with his performances of Macbeth. I wondered what would happen if I could enter into a rivalry with Forrest, the way my father had done years before in England with Edmund Kean. If I could pull audiences away from Forrest's theatre over to my theatre, I could take my first steps to greatness. On March the 2nd, 1863, Edwin Forrest was playing Macbeth at the Chestnut Street Theatre in Philadelphia. And on that same evening, I opened as Macbeth at the Arch Street Theatre in Philadelphia. Tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, brief candle, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more.
When I was a child, my father paid me money to learn the role of Macbeth while he was off on tour. I was always leaving out the line, to the last syllable of recorded time. My father docked me pennies when he got home.
But with Forrest, at the end of the opening night performance, audiences actually deserted Forrest's theatre and came over to my theatre. They preferred to see the younger Booth play Macbeth. In short, I had won the Forrest rivalry. I had taken my first steps to greatness. Then to New Orleans. New Orleans, that fair, fragrant flower of the South. I had to get a special pass from General Grant himself to carry me through Union lines, because New Orleans was already in Union, federal hands. In New Orleans, I played such roles as Othello, Macbeth, Charles de Moor, and Shylock in The Merchant of Venice. In New Orleans, I hit new heights as an actor.
middle of the New Orleans engagement, something happened to my voice. I lost my voice. A doctor was summoned and he examined my throat. He said that I had overtaxed my vocal cords and I should rest. We had to shut down in the middle of the New Orleans engagement. A notice appeared in a New Orleans newspaper. The management of the St. Charles Theatre regret to inform the public that in consequence of the severe and continued cold under which Mr. Booth has been laboring for several days, and at the suggestion of his medical advisor, he is compelled to take a short respite from his engagement. Due notice will be given of his next appearance. Very slowly, I was able to get my voice back. And it wasn't long before I was able to resume the New Orleans engagement. New Orleans was the greatest triumph of my career. In the theater. When the curtains came to on my New Orleans engagement, I knew that my life would never again be the same. I packed my trunks, got into my carriage, was driven from the city, through the bayous, through Union lines, I had permanently injured my vocal cords. I had permanently injured my voice. My career in the theater was over. My brother Ned would have to carry on the family tradition. Oh, I might play an engagement or two a year, but I could never again earn a steady living in the theater. I could never play the long Shakespearean roles. What was I going to do? I would not be denied my chance at immortality. I shall have immortality. I shall have immortality. Then I had this mad, wonderful, brilliant plan. What would happen if I got a group of men about me, men who respected and admired me, conspirators, noble conspirators like Brutus, and we devised a plan to kidnap President Lincoln, get him across Confederate lines to Richmond for an exchange of war prisoners. Wouldn't that change the course of the war? I think even if the kidnapping plot failed, even if I had to shoot Lincoln for immortality, I should do so without any conscience whatsoever. After all, he's less than human. He's very unpopular in both the North and the South. He's the cause of both countries' woes. What is war but legalized murder? If I could do this, I could become a great hero throughout the South. The South's own great son. I could win a place for myself in the history books. Johnny Wilkes Booth, you are a mad, impetuous fellow. Your emotions rule your life, not your intellect, although I'm sure your intellect is very brilliant. Oh, you're a romanticist. To you, reality is romanticism, and romanticism is reality. Aren't I in tune with my time? My concept of failure
is never to be recognized. To blend into a crowd and never be recognized for any individuality whatsoever would be the most horrible existence of all. You're never wrong. You're always right. You have an instinct for being right. You've never been wrong in your life. I have illusions. When I drink, my desire for immortality is heightened. When I drink, I think I'm like my father. My father was often billed as the mad tragedian. When he was off on tour, he was locked in institutions and hotel rooms prior to evening performances to keep him from liquor. Once, during a performance of Hamlet, my father disappeared at intermission. His Ophelia, Mrs. John Drew, was half beside herself. In the midst of the confusion, from the rafters of the theatre came a loud cock-a-doodle-doo. Everyone looked up, and there was father, screaming down from the rafters, "I'll not come down till Andy Jackson is elected president." My father and Andy Jackson and Sam Houston were old drinking companions. The management promptly got a ladder, put it against the rafters, ascended the ladder, came down with father, pushed him on, and he gave his usual brilliant performance. On another occasion, father was locked in a hotel room prior to an evening performance. That afternoon, he persuaded a young black boy to stick a long straw through the keyhole of the door so he could drink mint juleps all afternoon. When the management opened the door, he found father as drunk as a bedtick, got him organized, and that evening father gave another brilliant performance. When father was off on tour, he was often half insane in his cups. But when he was home with mother and with us in the woods of Maryland, he was the most normal person you ever saw. I think I'm like father in that respect, only to a lesser degree. Well, you'll have to excuse me now. I must be going. I want to get over to Ella's house and satisfy my bestial desires in the biblical sense of the word. But I won't be long. I have an appointment tonight back here in my hotel room with an old school friend of mine, a Mr. Samuel Arnold. Oh, we have great things to discuss, great things. Well, bye-bye. Tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more.